be his voice and listen to his voice. These two challenges in the gospel today. A few weeks ago, I was with a group of priests, Baltimore gathering of priests, and during the evening, I was talking to two priests who were just ordained a few months ago, back in June, and asking them what were some of their adventures these first few months and some of their firsts as priests, new experiences. And I told them, I said, you know, as parish priests, we have different responsibilities. We have sacraments that we give and prayers that we lead. We also have the role of teaching and preaching what Jesus taught and preached. We also have the role of organizing the charitable works of the parish, all of our outreach to the poor and the sick and the suffering. And then we also have the administration of the parish, helping to plan events, working with the staff. I said, it's a good day if you can hit all four categories. If all you did that day was being in the office all day long, that's not a good day. But you do need to be in the office sometimes to work with the staff. But you also want to be doing the prayer and the teaching and the works of mercy. So I got back late that evening from that gathering. It was all the way up in Bel Air, and tidied things up, did my prayers, and I looked at the watch, and I was getting to bed right on time to get my planned amount of sleep so I'd be fresh for the morning. And a few days that week I didn't get enough sleep, so like, all right, Lord, this day I was organized. This was a good day. I'm going to go to bed on time. And the phone rang, and it was a hospital down in Anne Arundel County. I'm like, Anne Arundel County? That was my last assignment. I haven't been there for 2.5 years. How's my name still on the list? I go to Howard County often, but Anne Arundel County. And I was like, God, I wanted to go to bed on time. And now someone's asking to be anointed in Anne Arundel County. Should I go? I mean, do they have other priests they could call on the list? I'm happy to go if I need to go. It's kind of messing up my day. But we're always happy to go. That's why we're priests, to go visit the sick. So I got in the car and I was driving down, and I'm like, this just seems strange, God. I mean, this is just an odd occurrence. How do they even have my number? And why am I driving down to Anne Arundel County at 11 o'clock at night? And then I remembered a conversation I had 2 hours before with two young priests, and I said, if you hit all four categories in a day, it's a good day. And I had not yet done an act of charity that day. I'm like, oh, that's right, I was asking for this just a couple hours ago. So I was laughing to myself as I was driving down. It was a beautiful experience. It was very good that I went, very appropriate. But trying to hear God's voice, this is what God wanted me to do, and kind of discerning that. We're always happy to visit the sick. It's always a blessing for us as priests, bring the sacrament of anointing of the sick. So trying to be the voice of God, but also to hear his voice, discern what he wants us to do throughout our days. The gospel today talks about John the Baptist, right? He's the great Advent saint telling the world, get ready, Jesus is here. He's the Messiah. He's the one we've been waiting for 1,000 years. Big news. We also, the first reading was from Isaiah. We read through Isaiah throughout the season of Advent because he prophesied some 700 years before Jesus that a Messiah would come who would be born of a virgin, who would be called Emmanuel, God with us. Somehow the Messiah would be God. So Isaiah prophesied the coming of the Messiah 700 years before. That's impressive. But actually, Isaiah prophesied the one who would prophesy the Messiah. Isaiah prophesied John the Baptist. That's even more impressive, to prophesy the one who would prophesy. He said, a voice will be crying out in the desert, prepare the way of the Lord. The gospel today says John the Baptist is that voice spoken of by Isaiah. So a couple passages here. People are coming out and say, John, who are you? Are you the Messiah? He says, I am the voice of one crying out in the desert. He doesn't even tell them his name. He said, I'm just a voice. It's not about me, it's about him. Prepare the way of the Lord. The Messiah is somehow the Lord. Somehow Jesus is God. Somehow God has come to earth to help us. Respond to him, listen to him, follow him, obey him. Discern how he wants to save us, how he wants to help you. It might be not in the way you expect. I'm just a voice. It's not about me. John says, I'm not worthy to untie his sandals. Today we might say, I'm not worthy to tie his shoelaces. It's kind of an odd expression, right? But back then, everyone, for the most part, wore sandals, probably bare feet, walking around in the dirt and the mud and the dust. So they came into your home. If you had a servant or a slave, they would undo your guests' sandals and maybe wash their feet to refresh them and also so you don't get your house dirty. That's what a servant or a slave would do. John says, I'm not even worthy to do that. I'm less than a slave for Jesus. It's not about me. I exist to serve him, to speak for him, to be a voice for Jesus, to point people to him. I'm reading a book, a spiritual book. It's called Friendship with Christ. How do you have friendship with Jesus, with God through Jesus? And the priest who wrote it says, that's the whole goal of our spiritual lives, is to become a slave of Jesus, to become a servant of Jesus, to realize it's not about me, it's about him. I exist for him. Now, he came to help me. He loves me. He's interested in me, but he's God and I'm not, right? I exist to help him, even though he helps me. And to get that proper perspective of life, that proper ordering of where do I fit in the universe. I am important. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. God came because I'm that insignificant to him. I am important to him. But ultimately, I exist to serve him, to be his voice. So John is that challenging message. He says, I must decrease, he must increase. So in our Mass today, pray, Lord, help me to decrease, to be more humble, to want to do your work, to hand over my plans to you, Lord. And it was a lone voice in the desert. Sometimes when you speak up for Jesus, when you try to connect people to Jesus, you try to have spiritual conversations, you try to do the right thing, you feel like you're a lone voice out there. The world says, you're old-fashioned. You're using old categories of thought. The world is more sophisticated now. We understand things now we never knew before. We have new categories of understanding. No, Jesus was God. Pretty sure he gave us the categories to interpret the world, to understand myself as a human being, the meaning of life, right and wrong. Pretty sure Jesus answered those questions. We apply them to modern times, of course, but there really are no new challenges and no new questions. It's just every new generation has to learn the old lessons, the old truths. So to speak up, sometimes the Catholic Church seems like it's a lone voice out there. Like, are we the only ones who are rational? The rest of the world is crazy. At least to tell the truth. Now, following the truth is difficult. We have great patience with each other and great compassion for those who are in the fight, who are confused and trying to understand their own identity. We're not condemning people, but the truth is clear. Living it is not so easy, admittedly. But will we be a voice to speak up at the workplace or at school or in our neighborhood or at family gatherings this Christmas? Be a voice for Jesus. We said, you're allowed to talk about Jesus for the next 3 weeks. It's politically correct to talk about Jesus for the next 3 weeks, right? Use this opportunity. Christmas carols are all about Jesus, God. You can do it in public. To be a voice, right? To speak up for what is true or right, or to talk about God. And then the last passage I want to break out from the gospel, John says, there's one among you whom you do not recognize. Do we recognize Jesus? Do we recognize that he's God? Of course, we wouldn't be here this morning if we didn't believe that he was God, but can we go deeper in that understanding? What are the implications of that? What does that mean for my life? And through the week, we're here on Sunday, we're trying to listen to Jesus, we're dedicating the week to him, but will we hear his voice tomorrow? These little promptings that come along, like the prompting that came to me when the phone rang that night to go to the hospital. Okay, that's Jesus. Go. It's going to be the right thing. It's going to be okay. He's going to refresh you. You're not going to get enough sleep, but it will be enough tonight if this is God's will. When we go to work tomorrow, we go to school, and there's a situation that arises or a possibility of having a conversation. You're busy, but a coworker wants to talk. Do you recognize that that's Jesus? He wants you to do this? Someone said, yesterday I had a long to-do list getting ready for Christmas, and one of my children, adult children, called. and they spoke for an hour on the phone. They had things they wanted to talk about, and I was like, oh, I got these things I want to do. Do you recognize that Jesus wants you to speak to your child and listen to them and give them your time and attention? Conversation comes up, and people are critical of the Catholic view or the Christian view. Or do you recognize that's the chance to be a voice? Are you ready for it? Will you have the courage to step up, say something? You may not always have the perfect thing to say, just say something. A great way to do it is this. Another way of thinking about it is, or some people think, you're not condemning their view, you're just saying, obviously there are other views out there. The Catholic religion is the biggest religion in the history of the world, okay? It's not your personal opinion, right? You're not saying, well, I have it figured out because I'm smart. You're just a voice. You're just like John the Baptist. I'm just passing on this wisdom of the ages. Another way to think about that, or as a lot of people view it this way, right? Do we recognize those opportunities? Are we looking for those? Are we afraid of those opportunities? Don't be afraid. Be ready to act. So as we continue in our Advent season one more week and we go into the Christmas season for 2 weeks and then the new year 2024, we can recommit ourselves, like John the Baptist, to be a voice pointing people to Jesus. And we also ask God for that wisdom and that discernment. We beg him for the grace to recognize his voice in our own lives in 2024. Amen.